Hello and welcome to this episode of CXO Cafe, a series of learning interactions with CIOs and technology leaders on various aspects of workplace trends for the new normal. I'm Anil Chopra, VP Research and Consulting at CyberMedia Research, and your host for this episode. In this episode, we will discuss a very important aspect of workplace trends. That is collaboration, reimagining collaboration for business continuity. In fact, the pandemic has not only changed our priorities on the way we do, work and interact, it has also changed the way we do banking. And, the digital banking saw a huge uptake as people, could no longer step out of their homes to visit their local branches. And this acceleration obviously required banks to ramp up their digital infrastructure in order to prepare them for this sudden acceleration in digital banking adoption. And as customers increasingly rely on their bank's digital infrastructure, the bank's employees and support staff must also be ready to support them from anywhere, be it inside or outside the bank's branch. And we've all faced service disruptions in banking during the lockdown, which took longer to resolve as many of the bank staff was, working from home. Now the question is, how should the banks, build resiliency to ensure that their, workforce is able to perform from anywhere? How can they really, take away from these learnings from this pandemic and strengthen their communication network so that the, all the service that they gave, the support, and all the technical teams, they can resolve customer complaints in a timely manner. So we will discuss all this and more. And for this discussion on how banks should really do this, we have with us Deepak Raju, Senior VP, IT Head PMO and Digital Transformation, Cultural Transformation at RBL Bank. So welcome to CXO Cafe, Deepak.
Thank you for having me, Anil. Good to see you.
Yeah, it's great to have you. And before we start the discussion, Deepak, I'd like to give a quick introduction to RBL Bank and yourself. So RBL Bank is one of India's leading private sector banks with an expanding presence across the country. And the bank offers specialized services under 5 business verticals, which are corporate and institutional banking, commercial banking, branch and business banking, retail assets and treasury and financial market operations. And it currently services over 9.83 million customers through a network of 435 branches. There are 1422, that is 1,422 business correspondent branches, of which 271 banking outlets are there. It has 380 ATMs and spread across 28 states and UTs. Deepak is a seasoned IT leader with over 25 years of illustrious experience. He's a digital transformation champion for Fortune organizations to optimize business performance, elevate customer experience, improve efficiency, save cost, minimize risk, and strengthen competitive edge. At RBL, he's the chair of the IT governance and procurement committees. He's head of the change approval and technology review board, a member of COVID quick response team, and an executive sponsor of a robust graduate recruiting program. He has improved the overall IT delivery at RBL by 3x and achieved 2x faster time to market via business alignment. So wow, quite a lot of achievements under his belt. Welcome once again to CXO Cafe, Deepak. It's a real pleasure to have you with us today.
Pleasure is all mine, Anil.
So Deepak, the pandemic's outbreak, led to a sudden shift to a work from home culture. And though bank branches were open, as banking is an essential service, customers could not really visit their branches. What were the challenges that you faced during this time to service your customers?
Hey, great question. Before I elaborate on the challenges we faced as a bank, let me first give you a little bit of a context. Back in 2020, when the national lockdown was announced by the Honorable Prime Minister, the industry itself was going through a little bit of a turmoil. First we had the NBFC stress, and we were just beginning to come out of that tailwind of the NBFC stress. Yes Bank, as we all know, was going through its own set of challenges, its own turmoil on raising capital. Even in RBL, we had an unusual withdrawal of a large government institution from our deposit book. And then market reacted quite sharply. Overall, I think the banking sector in itself, there was a lot of, I would say, heightened levels of speculation. Despite no contrary evidence to anything of materiality, it was just pure market speculation. Banking stocks were, really bruised at the stock exchanges and so forth. We saw it as an aberration. The leadership team at RBL, we just saw it as a one-off event, and nothing particularly serious. And then, pandemic happened, and all hell broke loose. And, obviously, we hadn't faced this kind of situation before, and we did not know how to deal with it, and so on and so forth. The good part was, everything that we were committed to our shareholders, all of those things happened, and we were continuing to grow at a fairly healthy pace. We were, I think in that quarter before pandemic, we were at about a healthy 33% year-on-year growth. Our NIMs were pretty healthy. We were in the greens on the profits, were in excess of about 500 plus crores. And all our commitments to our employees were being continued to be fulfilled. We were still hiring at a frantic pace. We were acquiring customers at a reasonably healthy run rate. We were honoring all our campus recruitments, and we were hiring a significant number of campus recruits. We were adding branches. In fact, just before the pandemic hit us, we added about 63 branches right in that year. We must have added about 800 to about 1,000 banking correspondents. So we had everything that is going in our favor, and then pandemic hit. And then a series of things had to change, because obviously, like you rightly pointed out in the introduction, ability for banking or bankers to service customers, just changed lopsided, because customers started looking at hygiene factor as one of the key elements, and then they no longer wanted to come into our bank branch and operate, right? And banking, like you pointed out, was also declared, apart from the frontline healthcare workers, we also became part of essential services, right? We couldn't shut down our branches. In fact, I remember 90% of our branches never shut even for a single day, unless we had an incident where more than 5 people tested COVID positive, and we had to shut down the branch only for fumigation purposes. The other thing that was a challenge, and I want to come to a little bit about the challenge, was because RBL Bank has a pan-India presence. We were subject to a lot of these interstate and inter-ministerial guidelines, in terms of quarantine rules, or the number of people or capacity that we could operate. The IBA norms specifically applied to our frontline branch network. And for each state, things were different. Maharashtra was different, Karnataka was different, Kerala was different. Hotspots of NCR and Tamil Nadu, the rules were very different, relatively speaking, than Maharashtra. But all our branches were connected to a Citrix farm, which meant that 90% of our branches had to be operational, and we had to service our customers. It also meant a lot of technological impact or technological implications. We had to keep, let's say, for example, a staff running to make sure that incidents were responded to. We had level 1 engineers to take care of workplace requirements. If something had to go wrong, and a lot of stringent measures that we put in place. We see RBL Bank was also going through a major migration activity. We were moving about 8,000 staff from an on-premise Microsoft farm to an Office 365 Microsoft farm, which meant that restricting people, retraining them, teaching them how to do Office 365, which is all cloud enabled. And also, telling people about different ways of engaging, using remote tools like Zoom and WebEx at that point in time, before we had Microsoft Teams as, one of our, key, remote, collaboration tools. So yeah, I mean, the challenges were, galore. We were also very, very confused, as leadership. But we put in all the right mechanisms in place to sort of, watch the market, watch what the regulator was doing, look at other industries, look at what our peer banks were doing, and be able to react every single day. Just keep it very simple. Just react to the situation and take decisions on a daily basis.
Great. I think thanks for sharing that, and so glad to hear that despite all the hiccups caused by this pandemic, the bank has continued on its growth path, continued recruiting people. But I think the pandemic served as a great learning also, to shift to a sudden shift into a different way of operating. So in fact, that's where my second question really comes in from. How has this situation now really changed the way a bank interacts with its customers, and what has really been done to enable seamless interaction with your customers?
See, I mean, good point. I think, let's make no bones about it. The way customers interact with banks today has completely changed, right? In the first, I still remember the first 6, 8 weeks of the pandemic hitting us. We decided that we're going to, significantly increase the trust in digital, right? How do we offer customers real-time balance updates? How do they get information about their credit card, their assets, their loans? How can they open a digital account with the bank? Can we become a contactless bank? And this is what I think most banks were, always also traversing. But RBL Bank, because of its native digital strategy, we already had the foundational blocks. We introduced WhatsApp banking. We tied up with a WhatsApp integrator and introduced WhatsApp banking, which is a boon for our customers, because they could have the ability to just interact with the bank using WhatsApp, which is like a ubiquitous medium. And then we introduced video KYC just right behind Kotak did, which allowed the ability for customers to open bank account, have a virtual card on their mobile bank. See, I would think that in a way, pandemic sort of upshifted the digital journey for most banks. It is a blessing in disguise, Anil. In fact, all our digital channels were showing in excess of 100% growth, right? Our digital sourcing of accounts increased by about 4x in the first quarter after pandemic. Right after the second wave hit, that number catapulted to about 10x. These are kind of growths that typical banks would never see, right? And all of this were stemmed from the fact that customers just expected safety and hygiene more than anything else. They were happy interacting with banks online. They were happy interacting on chatbots and going to a website or downloading a mobile app and things like that. What it meant to us from a technological perspective was we also needed to up our ante, right? We had to up our game. We had to move towards cloud. We had to invest in a series of things. Most customer facing channels had to be re-engineered. We moved to Nginx on the web server, or we used Node.js for improving the performance of our APIs. We put in squads to roll out new features and new offerings to our customers on the mobile banking channel. And our mobile banking channel consistently rated 4.5 on Play Store, App Store, and we saw a lot of these downloads because people, like I said, customers were happy to interact with the bank using some of these omni-channel platforms that banks offered. So yeah, I mean, definitely customer behavior changed, and most banks were indeed ready for the game, and they indeed did do a lot of shift the gear and make sure that we were present at all the places that customers were present.
Great, thanks, Deepak. I think really good to hear about how RBL kind of acted on this, and glad to hear that you already had a native digital strategy in place. So that really must have helped you in being able to interact with the customers seamlessly. But that's about customers. Let's come to the employees. Has this also changed how your bank's employees kind of interact with each other? I mean, should God forbid a similar situation occur in the future, what is really being done to ensure that undisrupted collaboration between employees?
Yeah, great point. A happy employee leads to a happy customer. So employees are human capital is the most important aspect of any company, and we are an 8,000 plus employee base, and it's not a joke. We're all geographically distributed, and like I said, each states had their own ministerial guidelines to adhere to, and obviously employees were very concerned, and we also did not know how to what kind of strategy should we deploy. I mean, should we just go all out and declare everything work from home, which is not practically feasible for a bank like ours, right? A TCS could afford to do it, or an Accenture could afford to do it, or a Wipro could afford to do it, but as a bank we still needed to have staff. we have banks usually have what's called as a BCP team, or a business continuity team, which are usually a very thinly staffed team, but they look at all the critical processes to keep the bank running, to keep the lights on. A treasury function can never operate remotely. I mean, they have to come into office, they have to go into a dealing room, they have to take orders. That's the only way that they can book trades and make money for the bank, right? Similarly, there are many, transactional banking is another function where the transaction banking ops have to be in the office to do, make the transaction, verify the transaction, authorize the transaction, make sure that, corporate clients are serviced correctly. So yeah, it is hard for us to imagine that, RBL Bank would just suddenly become 100% remote. It's just not possible. So as a bank, we decided to adopt a hybrid work culture. We said, we'll follow a 2D work model where, people can come into office on a 2 day a week, and then we slowly move to a 3 day work week. Now we are looking to, move the entire workforce into a 4 day work week. But the leadership team was always coming into work. All our vice presidents and above, just like ICICI also, I keep hearing that their DGM and GM cadres and above were continuing to come into work. SBI, for example, never really shut. SBI, the fourth branch was like fully operational even during the heightened pandemic activities. So yeah, I mean, bankers are like well networked. We keep checking with each other. What's the right strategy to adopt. From a technology perspective, we are all, we work with a number of partners, right? We have about 1,000 contract workers from multiple partners. That was another challenge because some of the large players had their own work from home policies or return to work policies, and it is just practically impossible to ferry them to office at our cost. And 1,000 contractor workplace, it's just not so easy to get the logistics right. So yeah, it was difficult, but I guess we kept the contractors remote, and because we didn't want to tamper with the partners' policies, we made a 2D, 3D kind of work option possible for our employees. First, we said, okay, employees can just walk into any nearest branch, and they can continue to work. And then we said, okay, once the second wave eased out, we said, okay, can you start coming into our base locations? Because many practically just like the migrant labor situation in India, many employees just went back home, right? Why will they spend so much money paying high rents and paying through their nose in cities like Mumbai and Bangalore and NCR, Delhi, etc. They were quite happy going back to their hometowns, enjoying home food. Connectivity was not a problem. In fact, IT had enabled multiple options of remote connectivity. We had in fact a very series of frameworks laid out, approved by InfoSec and all that, and all the stringent norms of VACAs and vulnerabilities, etc., already taken care of. So employees were also given that kind of flexibility to operate, and none of our productivity dipped, and that's the beauty, Anil. We were very apprehensive because we are traditional bankers, right? Very conventional managers. We want workforce to operate within our premise, but surprisingly, none of the homogeneous work productivity actually ever reduced, and we had tools and sophisticated mechanisms to measure what was going on. Despite our 3x 10x increase in volumes, our operational fulfillments or work, or work processes, etc., never failed. And that's the whole point. I think people also adapted to hybrid working culture, and that I think is here to stay.
Yeah, great to hear. I think absolutely this has kind of gotten every organization on their toes, and a traditional organization like a bank where they would like employees to come to work. I mean, it's amazing how you've kind of seamlessly kind of moved to a work from home culture without really seeing a dip in productivity. That's quite an achievement, I must say. Let me move to a different kind of question, which is basically you mentioned about eKYC, and which basically is all video based. So now has video really become crucial for banks now? What do you think about the role of video now?
See, again, great question. Let me give you my personal experience. I think 10, 12 years ago, one of the private sector banks, and I don't remember either it was IDFC or ICICI, I think IDFC, they experimented with video as a platform. They in fact went and installed video ATMs. I know maybe you might recall, Anil. But personally speaking, I think that was a idea ahead of its time, and the initiative sort of bombed because there were hardly any takers. People were not, Indians were generally shy. They're not very camera friendly. So that particular medium, did not really see the kind of traction that the bank actually anticipated. But cut to 2020, 2021, video has actually become a very important medium. Just before pandemic, RBI came up with this regulation that KYC was a accepted means of accepted means for doing or replacement for in-person verification. So that sort of just eased a number of activities, our ability to acquire customers, our ability to do re-KYC, CKYC, and so on and so forth, because all that you needed was just someone with a reasonably good quality camera phone, and they'll be able to just verify the customer's location, do facial recognition, and also signature checking, which are like bare bone essential elements for customers to bank with us. So yeah, I mean, the notification came as a blessing in disguise, which meant that more and more people could actually do remote KYC remotely on a video call, and it also helped the customer at large. They could check in their customer documentation. We could do signature verification instead of expensive in-person verification processes. Customers could share documentation using the physical documentation digitally through a portal or an app that banks like RBL rolled out to. So this was becoming very easy for the customer, hugely beneficial, and also it removed all the bottlenecks for banks to comply. For us, all that it took was to put a good, smart, quality solution out there in the product in the market, just to enable three things, right? Enable a audio visual interaction, make sure that there is geotagging that is available, and have some good algorithm like any face matching algorithm that is able to recognize and match that is the same customer who the bona fide person says that there is to it. Also, the video KYC helped even non-banking financial institutions, not just banks. NBFCs came to the party, wealth management companies came to the party. Even SEBI registered intermediaries also, found it useful for someone to open a mutual fund. You don't have to go, and your broker does not have to come into your office to collect documents, etc. You could still use video KYC as a medium of convenience. So I think this is one of those rare situations where an external or an extrinsic factor has enabled an innovation that is just helped customer at large.
Yeah, you're absolutely right, Deepak. In fact, quite a lot of institutes, as you rightly said, have started, putting KYC, eKYC to use, not just banks. But yeah, banks started it off, and now we are seeing it being used in a lot of places where people are just kind of getting themselves authenticated through a video, and they're able to get into financial transactions, and also it's quite impressive how things have actually really panned out. So now besides this video, I mean, ultimately it's all about collaboration, right? Being able to collaborate with the customers, with the partners, and everyone. What collaboration technologies become really important for the bank's support and development teams? They need it at the most, at times like this where customers want speedy resolution to their query. After all, they're all doing digital banking. So the moment they face a problem with their mobile app, the moment they're not able to do any transaction, any kind of transaction, they immediately start posting queries and all that. So what collaboration technologies become important to be able to resolve these, queries quickly for the bank support and development teams?
So collaboration is very underestimated, topic. And Anil, banks, as you know, are all large behemoth organizations, right? You have multiple departments, multiple subunits, and ability to collaborate is always a challenge. I'm going to get hit for saying this, but yeah, collaboration within banks is definitely a challenge. Physical interaction also, because we are regionally structured, we have zonal offices, and then we have central teams that take decisions, and so on and so forth. Even governments, even RBI is fairly departmentalized, right? And you had to give it to RBI and the finance ministry. Yesterday they came up with the integrated ombudsman scheme, just to enable customers to interact, have a single window, right? You don't have to deal with multiple departments, even within RBI, if you have a complaint against a bank or a financial institution, right? So yeah, collaboration, like I said, very underestimated topic. But what has helped collaboration move to really next level is the availability of cheap technologies, right? As a bank, we were invested in multiple technologies. We had Zoom, which is a platform of choice that people used to go to collaborate, one-on-one, or collaborate in groups, or collaborate, have town hall meetings and so forth. We had WebEx, which people who are Cisco users, they took to WebEx quite easily. Then we had Microsoft. The Microsoft ecosystem was not very well known. I think we had Microsoft rolled out a product called Kaizala, which was used for a large sales forces to collaborate, etc. And then they were experimenting with Microsoft Teams. And look at where Teams is today. I mean, we're doing this interaction on Teams. When Microsoft pitched this to us, I think 2 years ago, we were not really so impressed with Teams as a solution. We said, okay, there are much greater collaboration tools available. And I come from the startup world. I'm very familiar with tools like Slack, for example. I always tended to compare Teams versus Slack. But look at the kind of inroads that Microsoft has managed to make in something like Teams in an enterprise setting. This has become like default collaboration, default interaction. It gives you the same, it's part of the same umbrella. If you're on Office 365, the implementation is very easy. You have the ability to store document, retrieve document. There's no more headaches of having your mails on a personal PST file. Imagine your personal PST will suddenly become 1 GB, and then your whole email starts crashing, or your Outlook starts misbehaving. And we've had many such instances even in our own past lives. So Microsoft and the whole collaboration suite, I would say Microsoft Teams, Office 365, on the cloud, things like SharePoint, which allows people to the ability to create lists or share documents, or roll out a survey form, or and get employee feedback or customer feedback. That's all become very easy today. And that's where we see it. Things like combination of OneDrive, cloud, Power Automate, Teams, SharePoint, and these are all classic collaboration tools that almost every second enterprise today in the market has just taken, like taking a fish taken to the water, right? Almost instantly, with very, very low learning curves, and almost every second employee is now has the tool on hand, the ability to collaborate and make things happen for the customer.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. In fact, I also recall all the pain that we had with all those large PSP files that used to happen. And it's amazing how, technology has evolved to a level where, we don't really remember all those pains, because, things have become so much more easier to kind of now, do and collaborate with all these new tools coming in. And, as you rightly said, it's amazing how, Teams has kind of evolved to a level where it is today. From relatively where it was before the pandemic, it's really accelerated now. So absolutely right. Last question, Deepak. Digital banking, is definitely the way forward for the banking sector. Based on our interaction that we had, and based on whatever we see in the industry in terms of trends. But people are now getting back already into the physical world, right? We're already, and you also mentioned about 2-day, then 3-day, and now 4-day work week and all that. So moving forward, what changes do you think will be permanent and what will be temporary?
It's hard to put a finger in the air and predict, but I'm going to say that I'm just going to predict based on how customers' behavior is changing, right? Financial Express, recently I read an article and it said 3 billion customers have taken to the digital channels, right? There is a prediction that in the next 3-5 years, half of the world's population will start using digital mediums. They will start embracing digital banking products, digital banking channels, and so forth. So if you ask any banker today, Anil, of who your competition is, if you ask a bank like us, size of our offering, we will say our competition is not really Yes banks of the world or Bandhan banks of the world or ICICIs of the world. Our competition landscape has now changed. Our competition is now what's called as FANG, which is Facebook, Amazon, Apple, Netflix, right? Customers are being usurped, right? I mean that's the shift that we're seeing. And banks really need to get their act together, have offerings that are in a single consistent digital experience, which is what these companies often provide. And that's the bank's competition. And if you look at the likes of, let's say, DBS or HSBC or OCBC, they all have very digitally sound strategies, and they're all working overtime to provide this single consistent digital experience, right? And the way I see it, Anil, banking will become more and more embedded. And this is something that I keep talking about quite often in forums. Embedded finance is really the way to go. The customer journey becomes paramount important, and the finance part of a financial customer journey will actually become silent, invisible, irrelevant beyond a point. Not really irrelevant, but yeah, it will really become invisible. And that's what we want, right? If you're booking a flight ticket on Make My Trip, the insurance is just the tick in the box. It's very invisible behind the scene, right? And so is the case with everything that we see, right from e-commerce to things that we buy online, beauty products, wellness products. Any online consistent digital experience makes the financial aspect of it completely behind the screen and really embedded with the overall customer journey. The other thing that I see is also Gen X and Gen Z, their digital literacy is like really very high. People are high literate on the digital customer experience. And the new generation of employees who coming into the workforce, etc., they don't need they're really not bothered about banking with someone who has a branch presence near their house, etc. They want branchless, contactless, presenceless, permissionless. And that's how customers of the newer generation are thinking. And that's what we as bankers or conventional bankers need to take a leaf out, and when we are designing products or designing experiences.
Thanks, Deepak. I think the last bit about the key trends that you've said are really, really crucial. That banking just becomes invisible. When we look at the overall digital experience, and the fact that banks are not really competing with each other, but with FANG. So fairly interesting trend that you've highlighted there, Deepak. And yes, you're right. I think a lot of companies are, in fact, not just banks, but I think a lot of companies are like looking at this as a competition to be able to give a single customer journey. So, I think that's all from my side. Thank you so much, Deepak, for joining us today and sharing all those wonderful insights. I think it's been really a pleasure to do this interaction with you.
Thank you so much, Anil. Stay safe. Good luck.
Thank you. So that's all we have for you today. And, we hope you really enjoyed watching this episode of CXO Cafe as much as I found, interesting in interacting and doing this interaction. We'll be back again soon with more interesting chats around other aspects of new workplace trends for the new normal. So stay tuned. And thanks for watching CXO Cafe, and see you again soon. Goodbye.